All right, in Hebrews 1, in many stages and in many ways in times past, God having spoken to the fathers by means of the prophets, during these end of days spoke to us by means of his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, on account of whom also he designed the eons, who being a glorious radiance and exact expression of his essence and bringing in all things by his powerful oracle. Think of the stuff he spoke in the past, but having made through himself purification from our sins, sat down at the right hand of the majesty on high, by having become so much more superior than the messengers. When you see angels throughout here, it's messengers, because it's speaking about the prophets and all that of past. And that he has inherited a more excellent name than theirs. Remember what Jacob said to Joseph when speaking about the blessings he was going to put on Manasseh and Ephraim? Exalt the boys, let my name be named in them. And, the messenger who delivered me from every evil way. Because he told Joseph just before that I didn't think to see your face, but look, Elohim has shown me your seed. It's like his descendant. Because he told him previously that El Shaddai appeared to me at Luz. And he blessed him, and that, he would make him a company of peoples. Those company of peoples, that would be Christians. And you get to verse 6, because he was speaking about, adopting Ephraim and Manasseh, that they'll be his. And he said, they shall be called after the name of their brothers in their inheritance. Their brothers are Christians, them called after them. Manasseh and Ephraim are called Christ. And look, now you got the two hands here going over Ephraim and Manasseh. Joseph was kind of confused about it, because he was like, that's not the firstborn. Because, Manasseh came out first, and he had his right hand on Ephraim. And put your right hand on his head. And his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He will become a people. And he will be eminent. That's speaking of that Manasseh. That's Jesus. Jesus will become a people, Christians. And Jesus will be eminent. He'll be a king. But truly his younger brother, which is the Ephraim descendant, will be more eminent than him, and his seed, his descendant, will become a multitude of nations. Well, it's the fullness of nations, if you look that word up. Just like Romans 11:25, blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the nations comes in. Then the deliverer will come out of Zion, the messenger who delivered me from every evil. Let my name be named in them. Remember, Jesus said in Matthew 5:17, do not think that I come to disintegrate the law or the prophets. I have come to not to disintegrate, but to fulfill them. For I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one iota nor one merest ornament will in any way pass from the law until it might all come into being. A law from Elohim, he said, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. It's Genesis 1:28. And also, you get to the Joseph blessing in Genesis 49 when Israel's telling about the last days. So Joseph is a fruitful bowl, and it says, his hands are made supple by the hands of the Havir of Jacob from Rahah, Eben of Israel. So that Rahah from the shepherd, and the Eben is the stone or rock of Israel. So you can say his hands are made supple from the mighty one of Jacob, from the shepherd, the stone of Israel. All right, back in Hebrews 1. So Jesus is at the right hand of majesty on high, being more superior than the messengers, in that he has inherited a more excellent name than theirs. Let his name be in the boys, For to whom of the messengers did he at any time say, think this, the voice of Yahweh, the one speaking through him, you are my son, this day I have generated you. And additionally, and on the other hand, because that's at 38:25 Palin, on the other hand, I will be a father to him, and he will be a son to me. Or Jesus is on the right hand, and on the other hand, you got the two sons here. And it's even bringing you to Genesis 48. He's got the two hands going over him. But when he, on the other hand, brings the firstborn into the inhabited world, he says, and let all the messengers of God worship him. Jeremiah 31:7. Ephraim is my firstborn. Correction, it's Jeremiah 31:9. So he says, for I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. See, there's a place in Deuteronomy that says Israel is my firstborn, and that's speaking to them as a whole group, because they're, out of all the families of the earth, they're the, only ones he knows. And Ephraim is my firstborn, that's going to the son of the right hand, the blessing. And now, just like we read in Hebrews 1, is from Psalm 2, then, you are my son, this day I generated you. But look, why do the nations throng in a tumult, and the nations murmur a vain thing? Kings of the earth rise in rebellion, and rulers take counsel together and against Yahweh and against his anointed man. Let us break their chains in pieces and throw their ropes off us. He who sits in the heavens laughs. He, Jesus, who sits on the throne in the heavens, laughs. Adonai holds them in derision. That's the anointed man, the Ephraim, the firstborn when he's in the world, because they're taking counsel, against the anointed man, Adonai, why Jesus is up in heaven laughing. Then he will say to them in his anger and vex them in his bitter displeasure. That's the Adonai, again, putting them in derision, because they don't know the full truth. They don't have a foundation on a rock. Theirs is on the sand of the sea. They don't go to Genesis or other Old Testament books to get all the doctrine, to paint the full picture. But I have installed my king on Zion, my appointed mountain. And I will, and that's like Jesus right there, being the voice of Yah. And so I will proclaim the decree of Yahweh. He said to me, you are my son, this day I have generated you. Ask me, and I will give the nations for your inheritance, and the ends of the earth for your possession. Think, John 16, we talked about when the Spirit of Truth comes, and he mentions how all things are, the Father's, and he's given them to me, and, and that Spirit of Truth, he'll possess all those things. So it goes right with this. And it's also in Matthew 24, where he talks about another one getting all his possessions. You will rule them with the scepter of iron. That's that scepter of iron, the rod of iron. You see it in Revelation. Talks about, I think it's 2:25 through 28, right around there. Talks about him getting a rod of iron, just like he received from alongside of his father. And then that one that comes down later, he has the rod of iron. Think Psalm 110, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a stool for your feet. So it's a prelude to him coming down, and slaughtering the enemies. So you will dash them in pieces like a potter's bowl. Be wise now, therefore, you kings. Be instructed, you judges of the earth. Serve Yahweh with fear and rejoice with trembling. Be ruled by the Son, in case he becomes angry and you perish from the way. See that Ephraim, he is the way. Jesus is the way too, and you got to understand context. When Jesus says, I am the life, the light, the way, he's speaking to them in his time and in future sense, all the way up to this. He is the author of life. Like, he had to die, and he sets apart Ephraim and all that. So without Jesus, this way couldn't happen. Like they're both the way. Jesus was the beginning of the way. For his anger can flare in a moment. The exuberances of all those seeking refuge in him. And speaking of that new son. So in Matthew 24:44, on account of this, you must also be ready, for the Son of Man comes in an hour you do not expect. Who then is the faithful and wise servant whom his master has made ruler at the head of his household, to give them food in due seasons? And remember that Psalm 110 too ends up saying he'll be exalted as head. But joyful is that servant whom his master in his coming will find doing this. Truly I say to you, he will make him ruler in charge of all his property. 16, John 16. So, but when that one comes, the Spirit of truth, he will guide you into all truth, for he will not speak from his own initiative, but whatever things he hears, he will speak, and he will announce to you the things coming. He will glorify me, for he will receive from what is mine. Remember the ask of the nations, and I will give to you? No. And he will announce it to you. All things, whatever the Father possesses, are mine. On account of this, I said he receives from what is mine, and he will announce it to you. See, he is receiving everything. Okay, back in Hebrews 1. So which of the messengers did he say, you are my son? Okay, on the other hand, I'll be a father to you, and you'll be a son. Okay, when he brings the firstborn into the world, Ephraim is my firstborn. Let all the messengers of God worship him. I'll get back to that one too, since I didn't go over that yet. And to the messengers, he says, he makes his messenger spirits and his envoys a fiery flame. And that will go hand in hand with what we just read, but let me finish this chapter. But to the son, that's that son of Psalm 2, the other son, the Ephraim. Your throne, O God, this is Psalm 45, is throughout the duration of the eon. The scepter of your kingdom is the scepter of righteousness. You loved righteousness and hated lawlessness. Because of this, God, your God, has anointed you with oil of extreme joy alongside your companions. And this is in Psalm 102. You yourself, Lord, at the beginning founded the earth, and the heavens are the works of your hands. They will vanish away, but you remain, and they will all wax old like a garment, and you will roll them up like a covering, and they will be changed. You, though, are the same, and your years will not fail. But to which of the messengers did he at any time say? This is that contrasting again, because he spoke at times past through his son, Jesus at the beginning. Right here, by means of his sons, who he appointed heir of all things. So, which of the messengers did he at any time say? And he said it to Jesus, the voice of Yahweh, the Son, up here. Sit at my right hand until I place your enemies as a stool for your feet. Are they not all attending spirits being authorized for those about to inherit salvation? Now, the funny thing, this is Psalm 110, so that sit at your right hand until I make your enemies a stool for your feet. Well, when you get to this psalm, it's 97, and so let all the messengers of God worship him. We'll read it, but it's him coming down from heaven and the earth waxing and all that, and the lightnings, and that's like stuff you read in Revelation. And that's when he comes down after he says, sit at my right hand. Because then when it says he makes his messenger spirits and his envoys a fiery flame, that's like his army. When he comes down, when he tells Jesus, sit at my right hand until I place your enemies as a stool for your feet. Like he said, on the other hand, when he brings the firstborn into the world, and this one says, let all the gods worship him, in which they put as messengers, because there's plenty of instances where we're called gods. It's Elohims, and so, and like Jesus said, is it not written in your word? It said, I have said ye are gods. And so he brings the firstborn in the world, and remember he said to Jesus, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a stool for your feet. Well, Yahweh has become king. Let the earth rejoice. Let the multitude of coastlands be glad. Clouds and darkness are all around him. Righteousness and judgment are the foundation of his seat of government. Fire goes out before him and burns his enemies on every side. His lightnings illuminated the world. The earth saw and trembled. The hills melted like wax at the face of Yahweh and at the presence of Adon of all the earth. The heavens declare his righteousness, and all the people see his glory. Those who serve images are confounded. They boast of idols. Let all the gods worship him. Zion heard and was glad, and the daughter cities of Judah rejoice because of your judgments, Yahweh. For you, Yahweh, are Elyon, as the Most High, over all the earth. You are exalted far above all the messengers. Those daughter cities of Judah, remember they're in that mystery Babylon? It's all those other cities they kind of got control of, the Israel cities. But you who love Yahweh have hatred for evil. He preserves the lives of his excellent people. He rescues them out of the hand of the lawless. Light sown for the righteous man is sown for the righteous man, and gladness for those upright in heart. Rejoice in Yahweh, you righteous, and give thanks for the remembrance of his holiness. So you can see this is all that Revelation stuff, like the lightnings happen and all that, like in Revelation 11 and some other places. But then Psalm 104, this is still like when he comes down. See, he makes his messenger spirits and his envoys a flaming fire. Remember, Israel a fire, Joseph a flame. It's just, they're coming down to make war, and you're not going to be able to stop it. So it talks about exalt my inner being, Yahweh, Yahweh my Elohim, you are mightily powerful, you are clothed with honor and majesty, just like we've seen just before him coming down. Everyone worship him. You who cover yourself with light like a garment, stretching out the heavens like a curtain, who lays beams in the waters of his upper chambers, who makes thick clouds his chariot, and who walks on the wings of the wind. Look, Jesus said in Revelation 1, he said, he comes with the clouds, all eyes will see him, and those who pierce him. It's the same thing with Matthew 24. He mentions about him coming, and even when he was getting, sentenced to death, when he was before the Sanhedrin, when they were asking him, like, are you the Christ and whatnot, and he said, you'll see the Son of Man coming on the clouds, and it's that testimony he gave. And you see in Hosea 9:11, the glory of Ephraim will fly away like a bird. And then in Jeremiah, I want to say it's chapter 40 or 48. I think it's verse 40. You'll have to, read the whole chapter if I'm wrong. But he will fly with wings over Moab. And that's walks on the wings of the wind. So, and this is him coming to make war, because you founded the earth and it cannot be moved throughout the eon and its duration, the deep as if with a garment you covered it. Above the mountains stand the waters. At your rebuke they flee. At the sound of your thunder they hurry away. As they scatter at his return. They go up to the mountains, they go down to the valleys. So Jesus mentioned about him in John 7 too, 38. Whoever believes in me, just as the scroll has said of me, out of his inside will flow rivers of living water. But he spoke this referring to the Spirit which those believing in him were about to receive, because the Holy Spirit had not yet come, because Jesus had not yet been glorified. That's that set apart Spirit, the Ephraim one. Jeremiah 17:12, a throne glorious and high from the beginning is the place of our sanctuary. Yahweh Mikvah Israel is the hope of Israel. All who forsake you will be ashamed. Those who depart from me will be written in the ground, because they have forsaken Yahweh, the fountain of living waters. Remember, he said, out of my belly will flow living waters. But he wasn't speaking it concerning himself. We read, like, Yahweh has become king and all that. Well, Jesus was to build a house for him. And if you see Genesis 28, where Jacob laid his head on that rock, that stone, when he woke up, he said, I have seen, this is the house of Yahweh I saw. And, Genesis 49, from the shepherd, the stone of Israel, speaking of Joseph. If you keep following the trail on that, though, Jeremiah 14, O Yahweh, although our iniquities testify against us, act for your name's sake, for our rebellions are many, we have sinned against you. O Mikvah Israel, hope of Israel, her Savior in a time of trouble. Remember with the living waters? And why should you be like a foreigner in the land and like a wayfaring man turning aside to stay for a night? Why should you be like a man who was astonished, like a mighty man unable to save? Although you, Yahweh, don't think that astonished. They always talk about astonishment with the valley of Hinnom and the slaughter. It's because that man, that hope of Israel, he's going to be killed. That astonishment, unable to save because he's dead. And Yahweh are in the midst of us, and we are called by your name. Do not leave. Remember, the glory of Ephraim will fly away like a bird. Jeremiah 30. And look, where is verse 7? Alas, for that day is too terrible to have another like it, and it is a time of Jacob's trouble. That time of trouble is a time of Jacob's trouble, but he will be saved out of it. Who's he? He's that firstborn coming in, that's inside of Israel. For it will come to pass in that day, declares Yahweh Sabaoth, that I will break his yoke from your neck. Speaking of that yoke of Judah, because concerning Israel and Judah, you got to contrast it. Because even in the last days, Genesis 49, it says Judah's hands will be on the neck of their enemies. Well, their enemies are Israel. I will break his yoke from your neck, and I will tear off your straps, and foreigners will no longer enslave him, because he'll fly away. But they will serve Yahweh, their Elohim, and David, their king, whom I will raise up for them. Because he's astonished, a man unable to be saved, but he's going to be resurrected, gone away for 1,260 days till he returns. And, before he says to Jesus, sit at my right hand. Because look, even when you get to 31, check out this crazy cool connection. So, make it known, give praise, says Yahweh. Yahweh, save your people, the remnant of Israel. And as you will see, I will bring them from the north country and gather them from the uttermost parts of the earth, the blind and the lame with them, the woman with child and she who is expectant with child, that woman clothed with the sun, moon, and stars. That's Israel. That's that remnant of Israel with a child in her. That child in her is that firstborn Ephraim, one who's going to rule with a rod of iron, that David that's going to be raised up, who's going to initially be in astonishment and killed. A mighty organized throng will return there. And they will come with weeping and with request. I will lead them, and I will cause them to walk by streams of waters. Out of my belly will flow living waters. And on a straight road in which they will not stumble, for I am a father to Israel. Ephraim is my firstborn. That's that child inside of Israel. That's going to rule with a rod of iron, Revelation 12. See that? And when he comes back, they'll be gathered. The woman with child and she who is expectant with child. Remember, that one's going to devour him as soon as he's born. And even when you read in here more, in the same chapter 31, it says, verse 18, I have surely heard Ephraim bemoaning himself. You chastise me, and I have been chastised. And is Ephraim my dear son? And all that. If you read this, and it's in Hebrews, I think it's chapter 5, if I'm not mistaken. But then you get the lie here, because it says, I will cut a new covenant with the house of Israel, and it's with the house of Ephraim. It says Judah, but Ephraim is the one that's doing the gathering, and it's his house. Because Judah, they're not going to be gathered, so how could you say that there's a covenant with them? Because look, speaking of the kings of Judah and those of Jerusalem, They will neither be gathered or buried. Death will be chosen by them until life. How can you say, we are wise, and the law of Yahweh is with us? Look, the lion pen of the scribes has certainly worked deceit. The wise are ashamed, they are dismayed and captured. Look, they have rejected the word of Yahweh, yet what wisdom is in them? So the clues in Hebrews 1, so, your throne, he's saying to the Son, but then right here, and you yourself, Lord, at the beginning, that's Psalm 102, right here. And you founded the earth, the heavens are the works of your hand. Okay, so now check this out. This is a crucifixion passage. And when Yahweh builds up Zion, he will appear in his radiance, and he will turn to the prayer of the destitute. Remember, when the fullness of the nations comes in, when that Ephraim comes in, because with the remnant of Israel, that's at Zion. So, and he will not despise their prayer. This will be written for a generation to come, and a people who will be created will praise Yah. For he has looked down from the height of his sanctuary from the heavens. And the heavens, that's the sky. Remember, Jesus is to build the house. Yahweh is in his temple, looking down from the sky because he is lifted up on a crucifixion. Yahweh beheld the earth to hear the groaning of the prisoner, to set free the sons of death, because he's the author of salvation. He's up there on a cross, beholding from the heavens, from the skies, because his head's up there and he's looking down at the earth. He's hearing the groaning because, he got nails in his hands and all that. To declare the name of Yahweh in Zion and his praise in Jerusalem. With the people and the kingdoms are gathered together to serve Yahweh. And that's going to be after when he comes down, though. He weakened my strength on the road. He shortened my days. I said, my El, do not take me away in the middle of my days. Your years go on throughout all generations. From old you founded the earth, and the heavens are the works of your hands. They will perish, but you will continue. Yes, all of them will grow old like a garment. You will change them like a garment. They will be changed. You, though, are the same, and your years have no end. The sons of your servants will live. That's, the voice of times past, where Yahweh spoke through the prophets of old. And their seed will be established before you, their descendant. That's that one that Joseph, Jacob saw. He said to Joseph, I saw your seed. That's Ephraim. So he's crowned when it says your throne, O God, after his death, resurrection, and taken up there. And then before he comes down, and where it says, let all the angels worship him in verse 6, and then hear his messenger spirits in a fury flame. Because before that happens, he says, sit at my right hand till I make your enemies a stool for your feet. Now look, Isaiah 66, Yahweh says this, the heavens are my throne, the earth is my footstool. Where is this house you will build for me, and where is my place of my rest? Remember, Jesus is at the governmental seat at the right hand of God, at his throne in heaven. And the earth is his footstool. That's why it says, the voice of Yahweh said to my Lord, sit at my right hand, so sit in heaven until I place your enemies as a stool for your feet. And your stool, that's where you're resting, his rest, it's on earth, that stool, footstool. Yahweh will send the rod of your strength out of Zion. So and it goes on to say, he will be exalted as head in verse 7. And it's still speaking to Jesus throughout here, and it says, Adonai is at your right hand. All right, Hebrews 2, on account of this, what we just read in the first chapter. So pay attention. So how shall we escape if we shouldn't neglect a wonderful salvation? So for not to messengers has he put under subjection the coming inhabited world of which we speak. And when he says not of messengers, he's speaking of how he began it, which he said, in times past, the Father spoke by means of the prophets, and now he speaks through his Son, that voice of Yahweh, because he's still in the loins when he wrote this, and he's given prophecy in this. So somebody gave in testimony in a certain place, saying, what is man that you are mindful of him, or the Son of Man that you watch over him? You made him a little lower than the messengers. With glory and honor you crowned him. You put everything in subjection under his feet. It says he's going to have all dominion, and that's Psalm 8. And for him putting everything in subjection to him, he left nothing not put in subjection to him. Not yet do we see everything put in subjection to him, because it's talking about that other son of Psalm 2 and the Ephraim. We do see him, though. This is that Manasseh, Jesus, the first one, who was made a little lower than the messengers. Jesus, through suffering death, crowned with preeminence. See, the other one, he's going to get crowned with preeminence, but right now it's Jesus. So that by the merciful goodwill of God, he might taste death on behalf of everyone, for it was fitting for him because of all, him are all things, and through whom are all things, bringing many sons into preeminence, to bring to perfection through sufferings the author of their salvation. See, he's bringing to perfection the Ephraim who's going to save everyone from the enemies when he comes down. So he sets them apart, and he's the one, he's not ashamed to call them brothers. Jesus isn't, and saying, I will declare your names to my brothers in the presence of the ecclesia. And that's Psalm 22, or 23, one of those two. But he said this on the cross. He said, my God, why have you forsaken me? And then he said, it is finished. He was reading that whole thing, and the people were mocking him, saying, oh, look, he's calling out to Elijah, because they know Jesus taught about him throughout his ministry, about the coming one. He's going to declare